All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Field Notes podcast. This is episode 2. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the first one, kind of rolling things out. My plan is to do a Field Notes podcast every Friday or every other Friday, kind of a Friday Field Notes type of thing. Feels good. I like the way it rolls. However, in this episode, we are going to be diving into the big question of, are non-residents really the problem? If you spend any time online, spend any time talking to other hunters, you'll find that, it's so quick, fast, and easy to point the blame on non-residents. And we're going to dive into that. We're going to dive into the biology of it. We're going to dive into the psychology of it. And we're just going to dive into the facts a little bit. I talk to a lot of people who, when they find out I like to hunt elk, everybody has a dream to one day hunt elk in X state: Wyoming, Montana, Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, whatever it may be. Everybody wants to hunt elk at least once in their life, especially those who live in the Midwest. I get it, like why elk is so popular. It's like deer, different. It's like turkey, different. And the reality is, the number of species is limited in these Midwestern states. Like Missouri, for example, most people hunt deer, hunt turkey, fish, maybe do a little duck hunting, but it's really a deer and turkey state, which is great. Love deer, love turkey, getting very excited about turkey season already. But you look at some of these other states, they have antelope, they have elk, they have bear, they have deer, they have mule deer, they have turkey, maybe 2 different species of turkey. And that's a beauty of this North American landscape, is that we do have so many phenomenal options. And elk seems to be the most popular, and for good reason. As somebody who's been hunting elk for a little while now, it is incredibly fun. They're an amazing species. When you get in the middle of a bugle fest, it is unlike anything in this world, and I absolutely love it. So we're going to dive into that a little bit further, but first, we're going to give you a life update on the life of Rashad, me. Last episode, I was saying that I wanted to hold off on getting a new duck dog for as long as possible. I said I had a friend who had a dog and we were going to be doing some hunting together next season, most likely. Well, unfortunately, that friend of mine is an Army reservist who has re-enlisted and also signed up for a deployment. So it is likely that duck season next year, this year, 2026 into 2027, he may be in the Middle East. It's actually very likely. It's just we don't know exactly when he's going to be getting deployed yet. And that's great for him. It's a passion of his. It's something that he really cares about. And I, want to be supportive of my friends and their stuff. Selfishly, I really liked hunting with him and his dog. So I figured if I get a dog now and get him trained up and get him going, that come at least teal season, we can start working on some stuff. So that's what I did. If you go over to my Instagram, you will see a ton of content already in the week that I've had him of our new dog. His name is Echo. And Echo is a 100% full-blood Labrador Retriever. He is black. He comes from a AKC bloodline, and his parents are both very good hunting dogs. So he has all of the qualifications to be a phenomenal duck dog. He's learning a lot. He's just turned 7 weeks old, so he's mostly learning how to poop, how to pee, how to eat food, but he knows his name. He will come out of his playpen, go outside to go to the bathroom to go potty, and then come back in. And we're reducing the number of accidents we have daily, which is great. I mean, he is so young, but he's learning very quickly. And so in terms of training, I have committed to the Cornerstone Gun Dog Academy program. And I actually plan on documenting some of my progress with Echo. Likely in the form of weekly updates, weekly video updates. So I'll probably just film some content throughout the week with Echo, and then once a week, maybe put together a little video just showing you guys the process that Echo is making. And we're going to be doing that in collaboration with the Cornerstone Gun Dog Academy. I may get a referral code for that program if anybody is interested. I haven't quite decided on if I want to do that or not yet, because it leads into a bigger picture about advertisements and in general. You'll see that, you watch any given podcast and you're going to see 4 or 5 ads depending on the length of the podcast. And it's always for the dumbest shit, in my opinion. You have, it seems like every podcast has an ad for BetterHelp or Talkspace or some type of therapy. Every podcast has an ad for some, gambling site, whatever it may be. Some podcasts, I've even seen podcasts that have ads for window blinds. And I'm like, what does this person know about window blinds? This is stupid. And then the same thing, with YouTube. If I monetize this channel and YouTube runs ads for people who don't have YouTube Premium, I have no say in what type of ads they'll see. So you could be, oh, Rashad dropped a new podcast, I'm going to watch it, and have to watch a 20-second ad for, I don't know, it could be a political campaign, could be, name the thing. And ultimately, I don't like how in the media space, creators are effectively beholden to the dollar of advertisers. You see this in the outdoor space too. If you're a hunter, a content creator, a video maker, a filmmaker, podcaster in the hunting space, you ultimately get to talk about the things you want to talk about, but you work for an apparel company, you work for a bow company, you work for a arrow company, and those are the people who dictate what you can and cannot say on your podcast if you want them to keep signing the check. And I got to imagine it's probably pretty lucrative for a lot of these guys, but it's impossible for them to stay unbiased. You see it like with the Mathews bow, for example. A Mathews bow comes out and every single person who's on their team is saying the same exact thing about this bow. And, it's obvious. They all get sent a script. And even if they feel differently about the script, they can't say, I actually don't think that this is the greatest tuning system. Or actually, this isn't the best feeling cam. Or X, Y, or Z. Because that's their job. That's their boss. Okay? And I've come to realize that in my life, I've worked for people. I've worked at places. I've done things. And getting to a point where you can be beholden to no man or company and still survive is really a huge goal for me, at least. And to a certain extent, I think I've accomplished that. I have my own company that pays my bills, and I get to, kind of dictate the clients that I work with and the schedule that I make. And as I start expanding my free time into the hunting and content sort of space, I don't want to, and it's not even that I don't want to, I refuse to give another man or company the ability to tell me what I can or cannot do with my life, with my words, or my podcast. So with that being said, this YouTube channel, this podcast is going to be advertisement free. And I'm going to start a Patreon. So if you are the type of person who's like, I like to support creators, I'm going to give this person $5 a month, whatever it may be. And I don't know if it's going to be Patreon yet, because I heard they're not the greatest company in the world. But by the time I put this podcast up, there will be a link in the description to some type of platform in which you can support this podcast with a small donation, potentially even a subscription. And this is the best way that I found we can keep myself honest and unbiased about a product. If I'm shooting a new bow, I'm going to tell you exactly what I think about that bow, how it's shooting, and that bow company can do absolutely nothing. To me, that's going to be the best way to just kind of go about it. I will answer to nobody. So in the future, you'll find no ads on this platform. And that is great. I'm going to talk about products that I truly believe in and that I use and have experience with, and I'm going to share that experience with you. That is the Dosh Gang truth. Moving on. Puppy, doing good. We got that out of the way. Okay, non-residents. Are non-residents the problem? No. In podcast. Psh. No, it's obviously very nuanced, right? I've been a non-resident in many states, and I have paid non-resident fees many a times, and it sucks. But most home states are very affordable. I just got an email from the Missouri Department of Conservation saying my license is set to renew for a whopping $22.50. I get that license, and then, you'll get some deer tags for, I think, about the same price. So in my home state of Missouri, hunting is very, very affordable. I mean, most people can find that laying on the floor. And so what does that ultimately say? Is that non-resident hunting in even a surrounding state, it's a privilege. It doesn't fall into our hunting rights. I would say if your home state is charging exorbitant prices for hunting tags and even land access in some places, we are getting out of the hunting right territory talk and into privileges. And you will see that more in some Western states that, for the lack of a better term, could be called progressive. But if we talk about the privilege of hunting in another state, because it's not necessary. Now, we could look at it and say, well, these animals are federally protected, so therefore the animals belong to the people. And I 100% agree. But the reality is that hunting out of state has always been expensive. It's always going to be expensive, and it is always going to get more expensive. And I think there's a few reasons for that. Number one is that the trophy hunting model that we've kind of evolved into, even if it was like a guy in Iowa has property and he wants to manage it for trophy deer, and now everybody wants to hunt Iowa because, a handful of people over the course of time have managed very, very well. And Iowa obviously is an extenuating circumstance because they do have very large deer, possibly in part because of a low population density and their management practices. And it's difficult for a non-resident to get in. But we're seeing states are adopting trophy hunting models to maximize profits. In some states, such as Washington. Washington's a great example. They have great elk over there. The world record non-typical Roosevelt elk was just taken last year by Casey Brooks. They have these units that they are now dubbing trophy units. So they know that, hey, we have better elk in some areas than others. Let's maximize our profits on that by making those units more difficult to get into, make people, more sought after, put in tags year over year over year over year in applications. And how they profit is through that process, right? So as a non-resident, if I wanted to start building points in Washington to hunt a trophy Roosevelt elk, I have to buy a hunting license every year. I have to buy that tag application. Both of those are non-refundable. Okay. So let's just call it, I think it's close to the tune of $200 for something like that. And that's just to play the game. That's just buying a lottery ticket for Washington State. And I'll do that. Some guys will do that for 15, 20 years before they get into a trophy unit. Okay. So you do the math there. It's a few $1,000 from one person back to the Washington, Conservation Department, which is wrought with, I could get into this for a long time. I have a family in Washington. I was born in Washington. And how they are managing their game species over there is absolutely atrocious. But that's not what this podcast is about. This podcast is about non-resident hunting. Okay. So they maximize that for those units, and then people from all over the country apply because there's people out there who want to do the Grand Slam and get every species, and they want to get the biggest species possible. So a Roosevelt elk is, Washington, Oregon, California, and some parts of Alaska, I believe, are the only places you can take a Roosevelt elk towards your Grand Slam. And so you see this in other states too. Utah is a great example. Utah has incredible elk, and they have some trophy units. But here's kind of one of the things that I want people to understand is that a lot of the information you'll find online regarding getting an elk tag in Utah, getting an elk tag in Montana, Wyoming, whatever, revolves around those trophy units. A lot of people don't want to tell you that there is more easily accessible tags in these states. Are they guaranteed to have as big of elk in them? Nope, absolutely not. They're not managed that way. They haven't restricted access in those other ways. Because you got to look at it from a biologist perspective. It's a balance, right? Of like, we want as many hunters as the landscape can hold so we can sell, more tags every single year. But we need the resource to either grow or stay in our desired range. So they're constantly playing this game of allocating a number of tags and knowing that hunter success rate is within this range. And so that we can either see the population stay the same, so we can continue to sell this same amount of tags, or if the population increases and it's out of range, sell more tags. The population decreases, less tags, so on, so forth down the line. But some states are like, I'm go back to Washington, for example. You can get an elk tag in Washington right now. It's about $1,000 all in, and you have to get to Washington, which for most people, like in the Midwest, it's like, for me, I live in Southwest Missouri. To get back to Washington, I have to take a connecting flight to usually Dallas or Colorado or Chicago, Houston, and then get on another flight to Washington. And so, when you're trying to do that with a weapon, a bow and arrow, all this stuff, the logistics can get more complicated. And then you got to think, oh, how am I going to get the meat back? Blah, 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 so on and so forth. And then if you think, oh, I'm going to drive, it's like 26 hours. So you got to play the logistics game if you're going out of state. It's a big part of it, and there's no way around it. But with that being said, there's all sorts of other great options, even around the Missouri area. And I realize that the non-resident hunting trend and traveling for hunting is getting more popular. But in the bigger picture of things, it's only looks like it's getting more popular because every year there are fewer and fewer hunters. The true data, not like, it's more complicated and nuanced than a simple report. The true rough and raw data is that less people are buying hunting licenses year over year. And we'll see times of upticks, like in COVID, hunting licenses were through the roof because the food, infrastructure was struggling. So people got back out to the woods or got into the woods for the first time. And ultimately, I think that more hunters is better because there is strong anti-hunting movements. But the reason I even kind of wanted to do this podcast is because too often you'll see people complaining about hunters coming into their state and creating divisiveness within this group of people, when the reality is that we have much bigger fish to fry. If you think that anti-hunters are slowing down and animal rights activists are slowing down, they're not. It's only picking up, and hunters need to stick together, whether you hunt with, a crossbow or a rifle or a bow and arrow or a freaking atlatl. We have to stick together. And the non-resident divisiveness is a huge point of contention. Now, ultimately, here's what I think the biggest source of frustration comes from with people and complaining about non-resident hunters. And I'm calling it an experience bias. If you have been hunting a particular area for X amount of years, and then all of a sudden you see a license plate from Missouri, or you see a license plate from Utah, or you see a license plate that is different than yours, and it's in that general area, and maybe you don't have as much success that year, it's very, very easy for somebody to say, it's all these damn non-residents blowing up this hunting spot. This place used to be bah, 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 bah. And they'll talk out of the side of their neck until they are blue in the face because they think that these other people who they've never seen before are ruining this hunting area. But the experience bias says the longer you do something, you assume that it's going to get easier. The more experience that you have, you assume that this process is going to be easier. And there's a minuscule amount of truth to that, because ultimately wildlife does not care how much experience you have. And if you aren't accounting for having to hunt against other hunters and the pressure that they might be creating and using that to your own advantage, that all that experience that you got hasn't translated to tangible skills. You can't keep hunting the same way over and over and over in the same spot and expect the same results. Okay. So I think experience bias is probably the biggest detriment to why people complain about non-resident hunters. Furthermore, there's always going to be guys who are hungrier for wildlife than you. If you are aging out and you want your hunting to be easier, there is 101 different ways to do that. But doing it in a way that a young man can just simply run past you is not, and then blame that guy because he's from a different state, isn't the way. It's really not, because ultimately somebody's always going to want it more than you eventually. And I think that's kind of a little golden nugget of staying in the field longer. Just assume that somebody wants it more than you and use that to fuel you to go further, to go deeper, to go longer, to go to new spots, to go explore more. I remember hearing a story one time of some duck hunters who there was this great spot that they really liked to hunt, but there was these old timers who had no problem waking up at 4 a.m. and getting to it, who would always beat them to that hole. And so they were young. So what did they do? They would leave the bar half drunk, go sleep at the spot, and beat the old hunters there because they never left. Right? Leave the bar at 2 a.m. and then go like sleep on the ground near a duck hole for 2 hours. Well, that's one way to beat them. You probably can't get away with that quite as much anymore, but it's that type of like, I'm willing to suffer harder for this hunting spot, for the deer in this area. I think people forget that scouting, like when I go out of state to hunt, scouting is like the primary mission. It's so like much more important than it. I mean, it's a part of hunting, but if you're not familiar with an area, you need to go put boots on the ground and eyes through the glass and find what's going on in that area. And so one of the other things that I think is really important to touch on, and I think that this might be the worst trend of this whole thing, is that we're seeing access be limited to non-resident hunters based on emotion and not biology. In the great state of Missouri, the Show Me State where I live, this year, non-resident hunters will only be allowed to take 1 turkey in the spring. Historically, it allowed them to take 2, which brought in a lot of people from, everywhere. Arkansas, Kentucky, Illinois, Alabama, Mississippi, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas. They would all kind of flock, no pun intended, to Missouri, because for not that much money, I don't know exactly what the non-resident pays, but I want to say it's less than a couple $100. you can get 2 spring turkeys. And so you would ask yourself, oh, they must have changed this because the turkey population is declining so rapidly, it can't support non-resident hunters taking 2 birds. Quite the contrary. In fact, the turkey population is still doing very well. But there has been some very vocal groups who complain about other people being in the field when they're in the field. And they think by removing those individuals, their chances of, killing a turkey is going to be higher. And that's just not how it works. Like, it's so seldom, it's so easy to get worked up about something like that because it doesn't require anything. It just requires you believing in something. And then now, I get to be angry at somebody and I get to feel something powerful for no work whatsoever. How about, here's a thought. You get your big butt deeper into the forest earlier. You beat people to the spot if you have the world's greatest turkey spot, and you hunt your ass off. You hunt harder. But then you got to carry a 20-pound bird a half a mile. Oh my gosh. I mean, I really think that we're looking at a laziness issue here, coupled with people's ability to get on Facebook and effectively harass the conservation department until they change the laws for non-residents. And here's the thing. When it works, you feel good. I'll be 100% honest. When I heard that non-residents were going to get 1 less turkey, it's like you can't help but smile a little bit. You're like, well, sucks for them, because we all want our deer population to be healthy. We all want our turkey population to be healthy. And I've been out turkey hunting many a times, seen guys from wherever, and I'll go talk to them. Oh, how's it going? You guys see any birds? This, that, and the third, whatever. But the same people who were complaining online or writing into the conservation departments, are you guys the type of people who only hunt opening day? And yeah, sure, maybe you go to any given turkey spot and you're going to see Arkansas license plates. You're going to see Kansas license plates. You're going to see I think that the southern states definitely come up here a little bit more, but I haven't spent a lot of time in the Kansas City, St. Louis area. So I'm sure that they're seeing Iowa and Illinois and Nebraska and all that up there. But that's opening day. Are you only a weekend warrior? And look, if a lot of people have jobs that require, 9 hours a day, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, or you got kids, whatever, I'm willing to bet if you talk to your boss, don't take opening day off. Take the following Wednesday off. Go hunt Wednesday, Thursday, and tell me how many non-residents you see at your coveted, world famous turkey spot that you'll do so much online from your couch or your lazy boy to fix the problem, but you'll only spend a day or 2 in the field. I don't think you want it enough. And that's just the truth. If turkey season really matters that much to you, take some PTO. Or go further. Go to places where other hunters don't want to go. That, to me, is the number one tool you have to be more successful turkey hunting, deer hunting, whatever. Go where other hunters don't want to go or unwilling to go. Couple that with some experience, some skill, some reading sign, some playing the wind, and I'd be willing to find that your success rates will change. But blaming it on non-residents is not the answer. Furthermore, non-residents account for a significant amount of money. I mean, we need their money. These tags, turkey tags, deer tags, whatever, it adds up. And that's why we're seeing states like Colorado increase their elk tag prices. We're seeing states like Utah increase their prices. Montana, Wyoming. A sub $1,000 elk tag is going to be a thing of the past and not too long for the non-resident hunter. And in the western states, some of them, I can't imagine it would be a little bit more frustrating because, like, let's take Montana, for example. I have yet to hunt Montana. I have a lot of friends who have, and I have friends who live in Montana. And they'll tell you, they'll go out to a national forest, to a wilderness area, whatever it may be. And you could be glassing at, sundown or whatever. And it's like, you'll see a fire on every ridge. Or I've heard of this thing in Colorado where guys are setting up tents on every ridge. So when somebody comes in and looks over this valley, it looks like the whole valley is occupied already. Every single ridge. He'll go out there with 20 little Walmart tents, set them up, and essentially decoy tents, which I personally think should be illegal, and it probably is on some degree. But these are the types of things that it's amazing the extent hunters will go to have a little bit of a separation from other hunters. But so there is a part to that, but there is always another valley. There is another ridge. There is another way. But also, those people don't own that valley or that ridge. So there is, and talking to people goes a long way. If you go up and just have a cordial, friendly conversation with somebody, 9 times out of 10, you're going to have a positive experience. You're probably going to leave with more intel, and ultimately, I think you're going to have a more successful hunt because of it. And I want to touch on, again, the sort of emotionally motivated aspect of what's going on here a lot of times. Like last year, there was a bill introduced in the state of Kansas where I waterfowl hunt quite a bit. Probably do the most of my waterfowl hunting in Kansas, actually. And this bill would limit the days in which a non-resident could hunt waterfowl in Kansas. And it's like, okay, well, we're talking about a federally protected species here. Kansas does not own the ducks. The United States government owns the ducks, and Kansas owns the land, and they issue the permits and things of that nature. And I'm like, this on the surface was so emotionally motivated. It was like, we are sick of seeing people from Louisiana and Mississippi, and we're having to fight harder for our favorite duck spots. And again, just because you've been coming here forever or because you live here doesn't mean that this hunting is going to get any easier. And if anything, it's going to get harder because you're aging out and there's a new crop of people coming in behind you who want it more, like I said. So if you're not willing to stay hungry and stay gritty for these animals, and then what? Oh, well, I got a buddy up in the Senate. Let me put a word in his ear. We're seeing the same thing down in Louisiana. Senator Kennedy of Louisiana. I love this example. So, gosh, this one absolutely has taken the internet by storm. We're talking about a sitting senator for the state of Louisiana. I believe he was writing a letter to the new director of Interior about the flooded corn issue has prevented the birds from coming down to Louisiana. People are flooding corn, essentially legally baiting all of these ducks, and Louisiana ain't getting no birds, is ultimately what it read like. And to Senator Kennedy, I might say, I'm pretty sure people have always been flooding corn. And I'm pretty sure that all of these other states creating wetland habitats, because a lot of them right now, duck season's over, still have corn standing. Why would they do that? They're feeding the ducks. They're creating more habitat. That's a good thing. Okay. Better habitat for ducks is a good thing. Oh, but we're not getting any mallards in Louisiana. I disagree. I know people in Louisiana. I've talked to people in Louisiana, killing quite a few mallards. Is it possible that Senator Kennedy or his friends who are in Senator Kennedy's ear are getting older, aren't hunting as hard? They want it to be easier because they've been hunting longer, or it's just not what it used to be. The numbers show, you're right, it's not what it used to be. It's better. there's more ducks now than there was before, and there's more hunting opportunity. So what's really going on here? Is this emotionally driven? Okay, well, how about this, Senator Kennedy? What are you doing for the state of Louisiana to improve Louisiana's habitat to make it more desirable for ducks? You can't say that Missouri's pulling off all the dang ducks with their corn. Do you know how expensive it is to build a levee, to get a permit, to flood a field and forego all of those crops? You're acting like these things are just popping up left and right. There might be 100 duck clubs in the state, true duck clubs that are flooding a ton of ground. Most of this stuff is done on refuges and in wetland preserves and wildlife habitat, which again is ultimately good for ducks. Now, why isn't Louisiana? This is your state, Senator Kennedy. Why aren't you doing anything in Louisiana to make it more desirable for the ducks? This is the area you have control over. You can't tell me there isn't improvements that you could do to the wetlands in the state of Louisiana to make it more desirable for ducks and better for duck hunters. Again, I'm not an expert in environmental politics, but complaining is, to me, not the best solution. Do what you can to make those improvements. And I'll tell you, people in Louisiana like coming up to Missouri, like coming out to Kansas and Arkansas, because Louisiana has such little private or public ground anymore. It's all getting bought up, turned into private lodges with no access for the everyday guy. If you're some 18-year-old kid who's gotten the duck hunting bug and you live in Louisiana, there's not a ton of places. And I'm not an expert on Louisiana, but if it's like Kansas, private land can own the water as well. Half of like a navigable water can be owned by private. So if you're a duck hunter and you wouldn't even hunt like a main tributary or a river, some of that could be owned by private land, and you don't even have access to the rivers now. And some 18-year-old kid can't afford to be a part of a, $20,000 a year duck club or whatever it may be. And so, yeah, those people are going to complain about not seeing any mallards on maybe the tiny little bit of public ground that they do got out there. And it's competitive. Louisiana obviously is a very, very hot spot for ducks. Duck Dynasty really put that whole thing on the map. And I think it's great, right? Because the more money that goes into conservation and even just buying duck calls, buying camouflage, buying waders and guns and ammunition, all of that gets filtered into the Pittman-Robertson Fund, and ultimately is why we have an abundance of wildlife today. But I think that a lot of this stuff is emotionally driven, and we need to get out of this habit as a community of hunters. We need to focus on the biology and trust our biologists, who are way more educated on any of this than all of us. We know a fraction of the information, the true hard biology that these guys have done, guys and gals have done and studied and read. And, they're able to go out and collect ducks and do all this, banding and everything, right? But, we have this preconceived notion, if we didn't have a good duck season, that there just ain't no ducks left in Louisiana. And we have to get out of this emotionally driven, restrictive. We should be looking to open more opportunities, even for our non-resident neighbors. Now, some of these decisions are biologically driven, and that's really where it should be. Let's take mule deer, for example. I've called biologists in many states that hold mule deer because I have yet to kill a mule deer. This is something that I would really like to do in the coming years. I've talked to biologists, and across, that kind of sort of northern strip of the country, mule deer numbers are decreasing. Point blank period, the end. whether it's a hard winter or a lack of predator management, mule deer are decreasing. And it's a susceptible species right now. And this is why you hear about this kill off in St. Paul Island, where they want to go in there and kill all the mule deer because they were introduced and they are kind of tearing up the place. And it's like, man, we're losing mule deer. And you guys want to go kill a few thousand on this small island and eradicate them? It's really difficult to get behind on something like that when there's so many states where their mule deer population is struggling. As a hunter, I'm like, sell the tag. How much? Like, if you're trying to eradicate them, sell them to hunters, make it a thing. Give yourself a good, like, nobody wants to let a team of, just animal killers go in and just kill all the animals and do Lord knows what with the meat. Make a thing out of it. Support the hunting community. Sell those tags. Yes, it might take a little bit longer than going in and just shooting everything, but I think ultimately it stimulates a lot more. But like I said, the biology side of it is, yes, mule deer numbers are decreasing. So we've seen a reduction of tags in Montana for mule deer. Does that suck? Yeah, absolutely. Everybody wants to hunt Montana. It's amazing. It's beautiful. But this is how we're going to allow that mule deer population to recover. If somebody asked me, let's take ducks, for example. If there was a poll and they're like, would you take a year off of duck hunting if you knew that the population was going to double and it was going to be better than ever, and we're going to do all this effort to make sure that the ducks can really grow and the population is going to become so much better? I might bitch about it, but I would take the year off. Look, I'm very passionate about duck hunting. I love it. I love everything about it. But I love the animal, right? I want to see the species flourish and thrive. Look, we kill in this country about 3 million mallards a year, which is a lot of ducks, but our duck populations are growing annually. Okay. So we have the holding capacity for these animals. And I could see a world in which mule deer and other animals, maybe elk one day, where the recovery effort is dwindling. Maybe the predator control, the predator management problems getting out of hand, or, poaching. Maybe poaching is getting really bad in some areas, which, side note, I think we will see more of. The more these states continue to raise their prices, poaching will go up. Not by me, but there is people. When I talk to a game warden, they'll give somebody a ticket and that person will go on and on and on until they are blue in the face about it's our God-given right to take these animals and you can't tell me what I can and can't hunt and blah and blah and blah. And from a certain perspective, I get it, but we don't live in a 100% wild world anymore. All the species are controlled unless it's something that's like free range invasive, right? Like hogs or something like that. All of these are controlled and all of these species are manipulated so that it can continue to thrive. Because let's remember, white-tailed deer was almost eradicated from the landscape. Turkeys of reintroduction. Most of these states that have turkeys now didn't have turkeys in them originally. Nobody's complaining though, because turkey hunting's fun and the meat's phenomenal. The point I'm trying to get at here is that with the biology of it, these are the people who need to be making the decisions. Uneducated people who just think a bear is a cuddly animal and want to ban a bear hunt cannot be the ones making these decisions, because as we know, when a decision is made to implement a new law or a rule or whatever, it is very difficult to roll that back, to get those rights back to us. Once they take it from us, they don't like it, they don't like giving it back, and it's going to take a long time to get it back. And that's if we have people who are willing to fight for it. Fortunately, there are a lot of people out there fighting the good fight for our rights. I know that backcountry hunters and anglers is very popular as of late, because guys like Ryan Callahan from the Meat Eater are now the president and CEO of that company. And I personally think he is a great advocate of public land, wildlife, and he has a very, very good conservation mind about the landscape. He wants what's best for the animals, for the land, for the people. So this next idea is, it's probably a topic for a whole podcast, but I want to touch on it here. And it kind of ties back to what I was saying earlier about we need to work harder in order to hunt better. I couldn't tell you how many times, I remember this year I was in an area near the Mark Twain National Forest, all sorts of non-residents out there. I get out of my vehicle, put my pack on, hike 2 miles away, and you can't even hear a peep. You don't see a stitch of orange. There's nothing. And those people, might not be willing to work as hard or able, and that's okay. But when it comes to non-resident hunting, you have to have a certain amount of mental toughness, especially if you are going to become a non-resident in another state. Let's say, I talk to somebody almost every single day in the state of Missouri, it seems like, who we get on elk hunting or we get on this and we get on that, and they all want to do it. And I don't necessarily tell people every time, but I'm like, man, you don't got what it takes to be an elk hunter. Sorry. To stay in the woods and get after it in a way that requires success, if you're severely overweight, you're not going to survive. If you have a hard time staying in the field or sleeping on the ground or being a little hungry or being a little dehydrated, maybe you get a guide. But even then, if I had, you can go ask 10 different elk hunting guides. They'll all tell you a lot of people don't have what it takes to be a successful elk hunter. A lot of people bonk in the woods because they're unprepared. They're not, and then they'll come up with 1,000,001 excuses as to why they can't do it. Oh, well, my wife or my job or my dog or ba 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 ba. When you're in the field, it is so easy to find an excuse. You can find an excuse like you could find a freaking acorn in a oak forest. I mean, they're everywhere. Okay. But you have to remember, like, you're here for a reason. You've committed to this. And if you didn't do the prep work ahead of time, you're not mentally, physically, emotionally fortified to be successful. This is why the elk hunter success rate is so low. Those people who are coming to your state and killing your deer or your elk or your turkey or your ducks or whatever might be tougher. And that's a tough concept to grab for some people because men like to think we're tough by nature. Put somebody in the middle of the forest with 3 days and food and water is getting low and no success, you'll really kind of start to see how tough you are. And so, again, non-residents are not the problem. If anything, non-residents are an asset that should be valued. I think that you should develop relationships with these people, because here's the other thing. I've made friends with guys in Wyoming because I have property to hunt in Kansas. Hey, I'm going to be in your area of Wyoming. Boom, 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 boom. If you ever want to come hunt whitetail in Kansas, give me a call. I'm offering something. It's like I was saying in the last podcast. Don't just take. It's a back and forth type of relationship. So, no, non-residents are not the problem. And keep in mind that you too are likely going to be a non-resident somewhere. And if you're just a home state hunter, great. Love that. There's nothing wrong with just being a home state hunter. Don't think that. And look, here's the other thing. With social media, with YouTube, you see somebody traveling all over the country, doing all these hunts. Remember, like I said in the beginning, those people are getting paid to do that, or it's being paid for by Hoyt Bows or First Light Hunting Apparel, whatever it may be. And comparison is the thief of joy. If you're looking at somebody else and saying, man, I only hunted 3 states this year and they hunted 6, or I only did this and they did that, or man, this person must be daddy's little boy because he's hunting all these places, blah, 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 blah. Who cares? Who gives a fuck? Do you enjoy hunting where you're at and what you're doing? Are you putting in the effort to be good in your area, in your field? Did you have a good time in Colorado? Did you see elk? Did you see bear? Did you take in the environment and all of that? Did you enjoy the road trip out there? There's so much more to this than just tags. There really is. And look, there's tags. I can get an elk tag every single year if I wanted to. I'm not going to tell you exactly how. You need to do your own research. And that's another topic that I think is worth talking about, which I would be happy to do a podcast on, about tag preparation and application preparation and how to make sure that you're in the race every single year. I know for me personally, I like to be in the race at least once every year for a sheep tag, one way or the other. If it's a $5 raffle ticket, if it's a $200 raffle ticket, whatever I feel like is a good opportunity, I need to have my hat in the ring, because there's no sheep tag in the state of Missouri. So I'm going to have to be a non-resident sheep hunter somewhere. And, I don't want to pay $30,000 or even more to hunt a sheep somewhere. And you need to be doing the same thing. You need to find what matters the most to you, start getting in some applications in those areas, and in building some points. And maybe it's easy to look at the whole thing and being like, all right, well, I need points in Arizona, and I need points in Utah, and I need points in Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, New Mexico. And it's like, yeah, man, you could spend $5,000-$6,000 a year buying those licenses and those points in every state. Totally. You could. It takes a certain type of person in a certain situation to really do something like that. Maybe focus up on 1 or 2 states. Me, for example, I buy a point in Wyoming. That is my number 1 elk hunting state. I'm putting in every year for that one until I get it. And then probably again, depending on how it goes, right? I'm also putting in for a moose hunt. A certain state has a moose hunt, is available in non-residents, and it takes a few years to apply. So I'm putting in money there. And then I'm also putting in for sheep, usually through some type of raffle system, whatnot. And then there's, all sorts of other, look, you can put together a huge list of hunts that you would dream about doing. And I see guys do this all the time. I was talking to somebody the other day, and they ripped off all these different hunts that they want to do and stuff. And I'm just like, yeah, do you know anything about that hunt, or is it just a dream? Look, ideas start as dreams. You're allowed to dream about shooting a big grizzly bear before you get onto the Alaska website and dig through the handbook and figure out what it takes to get a grizzly tag, because it's not impossible. You just have to want it enough and put it, look, it's easy to say, oh, $1,000 for a non-resident, that's BS. But then you'll go and watch somebody spend that same person on a new bow when their last bow was working perfectly. And it's like, you just don't want it enough. And that's okay if you don't, because here's the reality. That $1,000 is probably going to just go down the drain. It is difficult to be a successful elk hunter. You have to be fortified. And now that hunting season is wrapped up, I'm back in the gym more, and we'll be talking more about, sort of hunt ready physical fitness, and what it takes to just be. You don't have to have a ton of muscle mass. If anything, this is going to sound arrogant, I feel like I actually have too much muscle mass sometimes for what I want to do in the backcountry. I would, it's a give and take. Nobody wants to lose muscle mass, but being lighter in the woods would certainly be an advantage at points. So we have a podcast coming up. We'll be talking about, it'll probably be about fortification, mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, and what it takes to be successful deep in the backcountry, and going in for multiple days. And then, here's another thing that I'm really excited about. I have an idea for a book, and this book is going to be about bow hunting whitetails in the Ozark backcountry. Okay, so over the next handful of years, I'm going to spend a good amount of time during my deer season with this style of hunting. We're going to be documenting a lot of it on camera and writing quite a bit. And then I want to put together a book after a few years of this. And once I can really speak the language of bow hunting whitetails in the Ozark backcountry and understand these animals and take some respectable animals in those environments. So stay tuned for that. I'm kind of putting it out there so I can hold myself accountable, but this is something that I'm very, very passionate about. Living in I probably live in the Ozark foothills, but that's where I like to hunt. And so I want to write a book about it. I'm excited about that. So it's about time to let the puppy out and go potty. I'm sure he's probably in there getting ready to whine any minute now. But this has been Field Notes with Rashad, the newest, latest, and greatest podcast to hit the airwaves. I am on the road to 1,000 YouTube subscribers. So please, if you are watching this, subscribe, hit that like button. And we got a lot more fun stuff coming. I'll keep you guys posted. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one. Peace.